Good sign.
Alrighty.
The and we're live. Believe it or not. So, uh, good evening, folks. Hi, welcome to episode 38 of Cube Nerds, leaving on a jet plane. We'll be talking tonight about business travel, and Mike, unfortunately, is unable to join us tonight. He's not feeling well, and he's kind of busy. And so we have a special guest with us. Whose name on here is Crazy Aunt Julie. This is Julie Hoverson, who is I almost want to say a coworker of mine, although remote. Julie also does voice work and so much more. And Julie, thank you for joining Cube Nerds.
Hiya. I'm so glad to be here.
So
I'm
very
a
last minute.
oh,
Thank you so
I'm a big
much.
old ham.
So, you can tell us as much or as little as you want about your background and what you do and where you are. Otherwise, our topic tonight is on business travel and business trips, and we'll be talking about that in uh, conjunction with working either for a company or corporate, or if you do things that aren't in an office environment, what kind of business travel do you do? And so that happens for creatives as well as people who are just sort of cube nerds or stuck in a cubicle farm as I had been.
Mhm.
So
Well,
we already
oh,
have somebody watching. So Pat, hi, since I see
it's
that.
nice when you can say hi to every audience member individually.
Yes, it is. And let me
That's not
put
my
my
phone.
phone on mute since people aren't supposed to leave comments by calling me on my private line. So
Well, just to give you a quick idea of who I am, I spent 20 years working in word processing in a intellectual property law firm. So I have plenty of cubicle experience. Never did any traveling for that job. I mean, apart from, to and from work. But during that time, I've had my own clothing line, I've had my own fanzine, had my own audio drama podcast, have done a certain amount of writing, professional writing, and have narrated 900 audiobooks for Amazon.com for Audible.
yeah,
Um, and I've traveled for at least 3 out of those 4, I think. I mean, right now, I would love to be able to go to Ontario and see any of the recordings of one of the scripts that I've licensed out to a drama group out there, or to go to Germany. That's where I really want to go and see something done with the scripts that I've licensed to a German company that they've translated and remade in German. But I
no,
mean, and
they've
all of
already
this,
done that. So
yes, they
that's
have.
not happening. They've already been doing
Well, I
those
mean,
in
they're
Germany,
still doing them. I mean, they're
which
not through all of them
staggers
yet.
me.
Yeah, they don't put them all out at once. They put them out once a month or so, and they have other shows also. So they've been staggering them out so they're not just throwing all so that their series, which is called Angst um Mitternacht, which means midnight fears or midnight angst. I think that's right. I'm sorry if I'm quoting it wrong. I don't have it in front of me, but I'm not the only person writing for that series. It's like the Twilight Zone, and I'm Charles Beaumont.
I was going
And
to say it's like an anthology series, sort of like Black Mirror. For those of you with Netflix who've seen that series,
and are too young for Twilight Zone.
and they're or who know who Rod Serling is, which
Yeah.
is something I ran into in amongst of other group of people, and I was like, "Oh, okay." I didn't expect everybody to have seen it, but at least to have heard. But
Mm.
uh, one moves on. Anyway, and so Charles Beaumont, I like that. It's a
Yeah.
deep dive. And Richard
So,
Matheson, that's my favorite.
oh yeah, or Richard Maui. I just didn't want to lay claim. I didn't want to sound like I was bragging, but Beaumont was good too.
Yeah,
Um, so yeah, I mean, mostly I've traveled for the fanzine, which was a TTRPG thing before they called it TTRPG. Back when it was just role playing games because they didn't have computer role playing games on a grand scale. They hadn't co-opted the name yet. So I've done a lot of doing that, to going to different conventions to demo games and promote my stuff. But
Ooh.
yeah, well,
That counts as a business trip if you're in the business of,
I counted
uh
it at the time. Yeah.
yeah. Now you've written things for role-playing games as far as, modules and,
Well,
what's the word for it? You've hosted,
scenarios. What?
and you've hosted, games and teams like that. Is that
Yeah.
correct?
Well, yes, I've run games all my life, and uh, I wrote for the magazine, but also I've written several things that were published in other people's books. I mean, it's all very well to claim you're self-published. It's when somebody else likes your work that it really counts. Well, I
That's
mean, not
true.
always, but that's kind of how I always looked at it. Um, and so, yeah, I even have a photography credit in one of them, but not because I'm a good photographer, but because I happen to be available. So, yeah,
Understood.
but I mean, it's not like I've been everywhere, but I went to Gen Con in Milwaukee back when it was in Milwaukee, which was 20 years ago, and went several years in a row. And I've been up to Canada a lot, for gaming conventions up there, things like that, and then mostly just within the state. So I haven't really traveled that much.
Not that much. That's more than I've ever traveled, I think, but,
Yeah. Well,
I
and when
have
it
taken business trips of my own, but, not to kinda neat locations like that.
mm. Well,
Um,
and while I was studying screenwriting, I traveled to LA a couple times for classes, and Albuquerque once. I just went to Albuquerque to soak in the atmosphere, and I was Albuquerque.
well, how is Albuquerque? So
Well,
speaking of
I mean, it
atmosphere and,
was
things like what was the best place you ever got to travel to in regards to work? As far as, whether it's either traveling itself or where you stayed or the events once you got there, because those are the kind of things we'll be talking about. Although I know that we may not have you for the full episode tonight, so
uh,
I wanted you to get to speak about your own experiences first.
I suppose just Gen Con. I mean, when I went to Gen Con is like one of the biggest um gaming conventions, or at least it was at the time. I know there's all the East and West and SXS, all those now. But back then, that was the tip top of the tabletop role playing and card game and board game and miniature gaming, all the geek stuff that was out there was the
Sounds
big,
like
that
fun
was
to
the,
me.
oh, yeah. Well, and being really, not making much money, not making any money really with the zine, because hard copy printing is really expensive even 20 years ago. Um, I mean, we just put them all on a photocopier. Anyway, we got nominated for awards though, so it was a really good zine. It was called Serendipity Circle, and it was all about weird games, anything that wasn't sci-fi, fantasy, or superheroes.
Okay.
Um, standard type stuff. We did everything that wasn't standard. But the I traveled by I took the dog, Greyhound.
Oh, oh. I thought you were limited by traveling with a pet, so I misunderstood.
No, no.
Because, you normally have cats and you don't have
Oh,
dogs
yes.
usually. Okay.
Yes, no. The cat stayed at home. I took the dog, and and that was really, really always such an experience.
Well, go
Um,
into that. I mean, I've never taken, well, actually, I'll correct that. I think I did take a bus trip once, but, it was so long ago, I don't really remember the details very well. But going long distance on a bus trip, how does that compare? I don't know. Have you ever traveled by air or by
I,
train?
I I took air down to LA when I went,
Okay.
and I went to Las Vegas a few years back, not for a visit, just to help a friend move. And so I've done air a few times, but
Okay.
well, the bus is I had the advantage of having my very first long distance bus experience be with Drum and Bugle Corps in 8th grade on really, really terrible old buses, one of which didn't have a functional bathroom. Um, so
The
every
trip
time,
was banned.
yeah. So the every time I got on Greyhound, my first thought was, oh, this is nice. Because
Well,
by
that's good.
comparison, it was. Yeah. So, so it's all in your view on things. But and I packed along an entire duffel bag full of cassettes of books on cassette because that was what I had. I went to the library and checked them all out. I hope it's not illegal to take library books across straight lines, but
I don't think so, but
and
continue.
a giant block of batteries and some big headphones that just said, "Don't talk to me, I'm busy." And that helped a lot. I had something to do too. I had beadwork. I was working on my dragon at the time, my big golden dragon. I That's a whole nother story. But making beaded patches that were going to go on, and that gave me something to do that was pretty simple.
Okay.
And, so that kept me busy. I will say the thing that always sticks out in my head is that stepping off the air conditioned bus in Montana is like hitting yourself in the face with a sleeping bag fresh out of the dryer.
That's an unusual comparison. I would think Montana's very cold.
This was always in August.
Okay. So yeah, that does sound like it could be, and that's an advantage of a bus that's at least has air conditioning. Have you
Yep.
ever traveled in a bus that has not? I have.
Oh, John Bugle Corps.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's like traveling in a boxcar, or how
Yeah.
I imagine it would have been like to travel in a boxcar back in the day.
Yeah.
But
Something like
I
that.
think that was a good point and a good tip, though, that part of the squirmishness that people have about traveling, especially for business or whatever, is not feeling like mingling with whomever you're traveling with if you're not driving yourself. So whether
Hmm.
you're taking train, car, or bus, you you unfortunately will normally be sitting next to somebody unless you're in, let's say, first class in a plane, because I don't think they have first and second class on buses,
No, no,
or in
there's nothing
trains.
like that. If you're lucky, if
Although
you're
they do in Britain, I guess, have
oh, well,
first
yeah,
class
but
train seats.
yeah, they do. But they
Interesting.
have
I've never been.
better train. Well, I shouldn't say better. They also have
Have you
replacement
been to
bus
Britain?
service. No,
Oh,
I
okay.
haven't been to
Me
any country I can't drive to. In other words, Canada. But yeah. Well, and I mean, I'm pretty gregarious. I can talk to anybody, but I don't want to have to do it all the time. But when I was on the last time I was on a plane, I was in the middle seat, and the lady in the window seat was this very sweet Japanese young woman. And when we hit some turbulence, she was very, very nervous. And I was like, "Hey, would it help if you want to hold my hand?" And she's like, "Yes, please."
Oh,
So, I mean, it's just, I mean, at least I could probably even deal if I was sitting next to a squalling baby if I had to. But there's everybody has their hard nose.
it's interesting. And it's a pity that Mike isn't here, our normal co-host, because one of the last times that I did fly, I always try to get a window seat if I can, just so that I have at least a little bit of extra space on either my left elbow or my right elbow,
Mhm,
and I can lean up against the side. And I like to look out the window. It's rare, but every once in a while you do get a flight where you can see the ground after you take off,
mhm,
and it's Also, it's nice not to be in the middle if you don't have to be, unless somebody on one side of you is a friend or somebody you're traveling with. And on the one of the last trips I did take with the company I used to work for, I had a kid sitting next to me. Nice kid, but he was gregarious in a way that I didn't feel like being. And he was playing with little action figures of wrestling stars, pro wrestling stars. So Mike is very much of a wrestling fan. I was curious to see what his take on having to sit next to somebody who was playing with that actively would make it more fun for him, or still just be sitting next to a kid who wanted to talk more than I did. You like him, that kind of thing. And I think I did pretty good. I didn't look annoyed. I didn't like sneer and put on I wasn't wearing headphones or anything like that.
Yeah.
And I wanted to read, which I
Hmm.
didn't get to do, but sometimes even reading isn't kind of fun on a plane. So I
Yeah, it all
digress.
depends. I mean, and there's that sense of timelessness, and you're never gonna get there. It's never gonna
And
end.
well,
But
it's interesting you mentioned flying. I didn't know if you were nervous about flying. Quite a lot of people are. My own wife, it turns out, is. She tells me these things after we book a flight or if we go somewhere. We went to Luray Caverns in Virginia on an almost business trip I took about 5 years ago when I wanted to visit our office down in Virginia. And on the way there, I'm like, oh, this is cool. We can visit Luray Caverns. It's a huge natural cave made out of limestone. It's not just a breakdown cave or a small thing, it's a very popular, huge cavern system that's open to the tourist public. And as we get there, and as we're about to go in, as they take in, like 15 people per group, she's like, I'm a little, claustrophobic. I'm like, since when are you claustrophobic? Like, yeah, I just it got worse. I don't understand it. And, evidently, she gets seasick too. But
I mean,
um,
everybody has their things though, and they don't always. And a lot of people though seriously are like, okay, it'll be different this time, or oh yeah, it won't be so bad because it'll be in a group, or different things like that. And then when they actually get down to it, they realize, no, I was optimistic. But and admitting weakness is not something everybody does really, really is not me, that's for sure. But I mean, flying. Well, I guess I class it like with roller coasters. I used to be scared to death of roller coasters. Then I was forced to go on a bunch of them. School trip, band, and
hmm.
and realized that if that didn't kill me, then nothing else is going to kill me. So I might as well enjoy it. And and if it was going to kill me, there's jack I could do about it. So, I mean, I have to admit, okay, this is the kind of attitude I have. When I was at the law firm, we were on the 28th floor at the time, and there was one of the larger earthquakes that Seattle has had. And
Oh, that's right. You're on the West Coast, so you're susceptible to different sorts of weather that most of our listeners are used to out here on the East Coast of the U.S.
yeah, we get more earthquakes and less blizzards. I mean, we get a blizzard every 15 years or so, but
And heat
it's
waves. You've lately been getting heat waves that you never
oh,
had
this
before
weekend.
5 years ago. Oh,
Yeah,
that's right.
right
I
this
hope you're
minute,
making
in
out all right.
fact. Well, that's one reason I don't want to be seen on screen. I'm
Well,
hot, sweaty, and
oh,
gross.
that's right. I'd read online somewhere in, I think either the Washington Post or the Times that 53% of the population of Seattle, for instance, doesn't have air conditioning because
No, it's more like
never needed it.
75. It's more like
Uh,
75.
wow.
Um, yeah, no, it doesn't come up.
And it got into the
We
90s, I hear, or
yep,
at least further north got into the 90s up in Canada, which is just bizarre.
yep.
But
Well, yeah, but climate change isn't a problem. Sorry, that's my
that's
sarcasm.
okay.
In case anybody needs me to clarify that. Um,
Understood.
so but no,
But
so
anyway, we were, yes.
I was saying something about oh crap. Oh no, wait, hold on. Ah, backtrack. I was saying. Oh, yeah,
About
I was in the earthquake. We were at work. I was on the 28th floor, and, our department is, like, 6 people in cubicles in one small room, and and the building starts to shake. I mean, it starts to, sway because it's built to sway. The swaying is made to deal with the forces, but when you're on the
right.
28th floor, it's pretty pronounced sway, and 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 the minute I realized what was happening, I was like, "Okay, this is something I have no control over. I could freak out or I could just run with it." And I start letting my chair go back and forth across that little plastic tray, you know? Wee! 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 And across from me, my floor's, safety our department's safety department person is like, "Get under your desk! Get under your desk!" And I'm just going, "Woo!"
Well, if it's like a roller coaster ride, I guess you sort of got to roll with it.
Well, yeah, I mean, there's
You'll
the
pardon me the
big
pun.
yeah. Well, I mean, because I mean, I knew the desk wouldn't protect against, like, debris, but on the other hand, drop ceilings often have a bunch of crap above them.
This is true.
So, that's why you do it. And I even thought of that, and I didn't care. I'm like, "Why go into the abyss screaming?"
Now, I know that most of the listeners, if there are any out there,
Think I'm
is
insane. No, I'm
uh,
sorry, go on.
no, no, no. Will be making sure that I mention the fact that we did have a very tiny earthquake during business hours uh, back in 2017, I think, in
Mm,
July. And it was probably like a 3 point something on the Richter scale, which basically means you could barely feel it. But we did feel it. Our one of our locations had 3 stories, and everybody in the top story were like extremely nervous. I was on the bottom floor in another one with a concrete floor, but I could feel the roll. I
mm,
was actually giving a class at the time, and my podium swayed like a wave had run underneath it, and
mm.
I thought somebody was shaking the room or something. And I turned to my old boss John, and I'm like, "Are you doing that?" And he's got his hand like this, and he just shakes his head, and goes, "Hmm?" he, he he either thought it was funny or he just wanted to see what I was going to do in front of the class. And I just raised an eyebrow and I went, "That's really weird." And I went over to the door and there was somebody trotting past like this, like, "Yep, that was an earthquake." And I went, yeah, but it's over now." Anyway,
Uh,
that's our little East Coast thing, which uh, I'm sure we would all be panic stricken out of the West Coast.
mhm.
So
Well,
kudos
I
for
mean,
taking it
we
as
don't get them as often as it might sound. I mean, it is always a complete surprise when it happens. I guess, I mean, in
hmm.
LA or something, I think they get pretty used to them.
I don't know
But,
how, but I'll take your word for it.
I mean, you adapt or die, right? And
Well, that's true. Yeah, if you're gonna live on the foot of a volcano, or if you're gonna live on the the whatever the Saint whatever the trench.
oh, Mariana's Trench, that's a little deep.
Oh, not Marianas. Never mind. You know what I meant.
I probably
In
don't.
San
But,
Francisco, the or
oh,
not San Francisco, the fault. That's it. The fault line.
okay. I was gonna say, wait, La Brea Tar Pits? No.
No, not
Um,
okay. Yes, I've seen the movie Volcano with Tommy Lee Jones, and I remember the
uh,
LeBaron carpet starting to boil and all of the museum works starting to disappear beneath the goo. And
so
I
much
remember
fun.
the volcanologist just hilariously laughing about no, that could never happen.
Oh, yeah, well, I went to see Waterworld with my dad, who's a physicist, and, yeah, and he was partly deaf at the time, so he was going, "Where did all the water come from?
I,
Mars?"
well, yeah, when you see the little plaque of the Tenzing Norgay and
Anyway,
the
some
top of
things just
Everest, I'm
really
like, "Oh, really? Did an whole another planet of water just seem to cascade? Because if you
yeah.
melt everything, it doesn't cover the Earth.
I mean, when it raises it
It's
like
not how
20
it
feet or
happens."
something, but, I mean,
Yeah.
that's a lot. That's no joke, but at the same time, it's not that's
It's
20
not going to
feet,
cover
that's not
Everest.
that's not even gonna hit my house, you know?
The other thing is, if the water was that deep, you wouldn't be able to breathe because
Unless you
you'd
have
be to the edge
gills.
of the atmosphere by that time, and
Yeah.
you'd I don't know.
Oh, that, yeah.
He had a cool boat. Let's leave it at that for Waterworld. I
Well,
thought he
it
had a
pushed
really
all the
cool
air
boat,
up, so the air was still there.
and yeah, there would be no atmosphere left. In which case, the water would all boil off, and making this a much less fun conversation. What
Melody.
I wanted to ask was,
Okay.
during travel, things to watch out for. What are
Don't drink
things
too
that,
much water
have happened, you've done? Drink too much water. Is that during travel time or in
on a
general? Like,
bus
well,
or
yeah,
on a
that would be a
plane.
problem.
I mean,
I would
unless you
think so.
really like fitting your ass into a portable toilet.
In all the traveling I've done, I don't think I've ever used the restroom on a plane.
Oh, man, it's
I've
no
been so
fun.
nervous that,
Talk
my
about claustrophobia.
no, it's just, old time kind of worrying about things. That's not so much of a problem anymore. I probably would. But,
Oh,
I don't like, having to get up in a really crowded situation. "Excuse me, excuse me, excuse me, excuse me." And what is it with them and the drink service thing? It's like, as soon as you take off, they immediately clog the aisle with something you can't get behind or get past. This little walking,
I think that's why they
tray
do it right
thing that
away,
they
hoping that everybody doesn't have to pee yet.
I guess. But you're not allowed to pee when the plane is parked there for however many minutes or hours if you're, a late flyer, um,
Yeah, I
just
mean, it's
because
just
there have been
it's
so many
really a good
canceled
idea
flights
just
since
to wear a
renovating.
diaper.
San Andreas Fault. So Pat in our, listening gallery, sorry, Pat, I don't have any way to bring uh, the conversation's over since, Mike isn't here to actually do that. He is the official host, and he has, things he can
Access.
do to access, that I don't. But you're right, it is the San Andreas fault, of course. And Pat also mentions what a pain when going on a business trip, gathering all your bills for the business trip, and using Concur to get reimbursed, if you didn't have a corporate card. Yes, submitting expenses is a real pain in the neck, and having to track them in the first place, which is something you normally don't have to worry about on a regular trip. You know, if you've ever had to drive
Until the
somewhere,
credit card bills come due.
well, not everybody pays for credit card with everything.
Well,
Back
yeah.
in the day when I first started traveling, there were certain things I paid for with cash. And if you paid in, uh, let's say for gas in cash, you better hope you kept your receipt because that counts as mileage and you were getting, like 30 cents on the dollar for mile or however little it was still something. And without a receipt, you couldn't submit the expense
Yeah, see,
or
of
whatever
course,
you paid for. And oh, geez, it's all coming back to me now.
every trip I ever took has been on my own dime, essentially, because they've always been for my personal business, not an employer's business.
Well,
So
what
while
about,
I
as a
saved all
business
those,
expense to you?
yeah, I saved it all as
Because
business expenses and wrote it off on my taxes.
how
But
much fun is that to track? That
so
must be
much
even
fun.
worse than having a company do it for you. At least
Oh
I would
yeah,
think so.
yep.
Uh,
Oh, it's always
yeah.
worse, but But I mean, on the other hand, it
Well,
was
I
better
not
than.
that I would mind a company paying for a plane ticket anywhere that they sent me,
Oh yeah,
but,
that would be nice. I would
I've,
rather have somebody else doing all the math. That's for darn sure.
I just wanted to give a brief overview of, a couple of the kinds of things that I've experienced.
Oh,
So I've been in 3 different fields for, my jobs over the years, decades. So starting off in retail as a manager with, the bookstore, that I used to manage for Borders, Walden Books, the recently deceased bookstore operations that they used to run. As manager, I used to go to an annual managers meeting, And you can tell how well a company is doing by the kind of accommodations they put you up in. So, for that very first meeting back in the 1980s, when I was manager, I got to stay in the Hotel Washington in Washington, D.C. For those of you who aren't familiar with the layout of Washington, D.C., it is within 2 blocks of the White House. This is not a Motel 6 we're talking about. It's an extremely fancy hotel, very, very nice. The food was nice, the accommodations were nice, and we had lots of really nice authors that we got to meet. And it was wonderful. And we had a whole room with free books that we could take, which were all advanced
Ooh.
readers' copies, which is part of the publishing industry where they want people to read the book and then spread it by word of mouth. Bookstore managers are a really good go to if you want your book read by a staff and then basically recommend it to anybody who walks in the store. It's the same with writing a review for Goodreads or for Amazon. And so we had access to all the stuff that we never got mailed to us as managers in the store. Really fun, really fine. And after a while, through all the different recessions and changing of hands, at one point the company that became Borders was owned by Kmart. That went well, and so
Kmart was
we
big
were
at one
staying
time.
at just above the level of a Motel 6 by the very, very last one I went to. Still had really good authors. At the very last meeting I went to, we had Harlan Coben, and I still have a photograph of him signing my book there. And anyway, he's a really fine author, and it's just that from this wonderful thing where you're flying and everything to a trip where you're staying in a really one-star hotel and with a roommate. You're not by yourself. You're there with another roommate, and you're also having to carpool on a trip. No cost for planes or anything like that. So, ugh. Plus, when we got there, uh, this is one of the other topics for business trips. What happens when you get there? What is it all about? Well, it was nice getting to meet authors. We'd meet a few, but all the rest of it were workshops. Workshops on how to be a better manager, workshops on loss prevention. Oh, that's fun.
Mhm.
Workshops, and we would listen to the CEO of the company give us the financial overview of the year in the most boring terms you have ever heard in your life. And more or less what it boiled down to, here's what our new president is doing, because they were starting to rotate rather rapidly back then, and why we're avoiding all the mistakes that we made over the past year with the other whoever else we can blame for not having a stellar year. And you knew that 1 year from then, the next guy would be dissing whoever was on stage at that particular presentation.
Or possibly two.
Yeah. So as it were. I still loved all the book people. All the managers were book people, and all of the authors, obviously, and all the upper management all read books. There weren't anybody you were meeting with who were just there for a business purpose. Nice kind of business, very different, very creative. Unlike the company I just left a couple of years ago now, where those manager meetings were well, actually, I wasn't a manager, so I didn't attend any manager meetings. I'm getting ahead of myself.
Well,
Those meetings
oh,
were training trips that I would go on, or trips where I would be trained to go and train other folks. And all of those were very nicely comped. I never had to be asked to room with somebody. And it was still kind of boring what we did, but it was still nice to be able to go on a trip and see people in person that you'd only talk to on the telephone back in the day, because this was before everything became virtual. And I
yeah.
cut you off. What were you going to
Oh, no.
say?
I was gonna say virtual. I mean, nowadays it is mostly. I mean, virtual gives us the opportunity of doing a lot of those things without the inconvenience of travel, but also without any of the good parts of getting out of your house or bathing or when when I would go to Gen Con for the conventions, I
Yes.
would literally bring my rolling suitcase with me into the convention hall because I would carry. copies of the magazine in it and just give them out to anybody. But I would go through all the booths in the huge sales hall and give them copies of the magazine and ask for review copies of their games. And I would basically leave with a full bag of other people's game products.
Oh, that makes
Um,
sense.
yeah, and empty it out of all of my copies of the magazine. But I would also spend a lot of time demoing games and running games for people, because a couple of times I managed to get myself on somebody else's it's basically get myself comped in by somebody else to the convention because I would run games for them. And in fact I would probably end up using floor space in their hotel room, and there'd be like 18 of us in there, because that's how sci-fi conventions work, and gamers were all broke. But and they'd let me do that. In return I'd run 6 demos for them or something, and that was pretty good. I want to get back into
That sounds
gaming
a
and
lot
start
more
running
fun.
online. I really do. But I used to be really popular as a GM. But yeah, it was fun, and you just try to be invisible the rest of the time. Or for many of the conventions that I could drive through, I'd just sleep in the back of my van,
Wow.
even when it was freezing out.
That
It
does not sound like fun.
wasn't that bad. I was young enough to think it was fun.
Now, do you prefer to drive if you can, meaning that it's not too far? Is that preferable to going on a trip on either a bus or a plane?
Oh, I don't know. I mean, I like having the freedom of the car, but at the same time, you're also then having to deal with parking and gas and whatever else, I mean, because there's also things like crossing the border. And I mean, because when I went to Canada back then, all you had to have was your ID. Now you basically have
Yeah,
to have a passport. And so, a lot of things are changing. But it
true.
was, I mean, oh, so it's all different, no matter what you do, everything's going to be different. But when I went down to LA, I that was just for seminars that I was attending, studying screenwriting, and that was hilarious. But I mean, you do what you do. I didn't want to go to any of the really big screenwriting conventions because I wasn't I think by the time I even thought about going, I was already burning out on the idea, because if you're not actually living in LA to chase down people and, shove your screenplay in their hands, then you're basically not going to get it done. That's why I switched over to doing podcast audio drama, because I could take those scripts and make them myself.
That makes
Oh,
sense.
and by the
I,
way,
I
just in case anybody's curious, my show is
yes,
called 19 Nocturne Boulevard. That's 19nocturneboulevard.net. And it technically it hasn't had a lot of new episodes in 10 years, but I'm still trying to get back to being able to make more shows. And uh the problem with that, of course, is that podcasting is I mean, it's like any other creative endeavor. It's totally hit or miss whether you can actually make any money or not.
that's true.
You
Although I
know.
have listened to your show, and it is quite good. 19 Nocturne Boulevard is available on most podcast platforms, by the way, folks. And if you want to
Yes.
see a great overview, they're on the website that she just listed at 19nocturne.net.
Yeah. I think it's still on
And,
.com too, but I'm sure it's
oh,
at Oh, it just connects over.
oh, you are good. Okay. Yeah, my website's only registered under .com, and I have a .net under a different name, but I haven't done anything with it yet since I just wanted to save it for whatever future use
Yeah.
might come. But I digress.
Oh, no problem.
Anyway,
And well, I
um,
mean, and well, it's not something I would love to travel for it, because there were a couple times when I had episodes that were made the finals in the Hörspiel Summer Leipzig, which is the annual audio drama festival in July, I believe, in Leipzig, Germany. And they because
It's
audio drama
Leipzig,
is
not Leipzig.
it's Leipzig, I'm pretty sure.
Thank you. No, you trust me. You're better at pronunciations than I am. So
But you make me question myself now.
no, no, no. I know
I'm
that
sure
most of the
somebody out there.
pronunciation choices I make are normally incorrect,
I've
and Pat
tried
out
with
there will
German.
probably agree with that.
I try with German. I really do.
So
And
here's
actually,
the question. Oh,
yeah, I was just gonna say I would
yeah,
love to go there for the festival sometime because I really, I really, I probably am considered an no longer an amateur, so I can't enter because it's mostly for amateurs. But but I'd still like to go now that my name's out there with the Contendo Media's productions, and I'm hoping to write them something original soon. I just have to sit down and do it after I finish the bit for the Ontario group. But um, yeah, I really want to go to Germany sometime. It would be really cool.
I don't blame you. I still want to go to England. I was hoping to do that, and I was set and had tickets to go do that before I got unfortunately laid off on my last job and had to cash everything in that I could get refunds on just because of finances. But
Yeah.
such is life. And who knows? I'll hopefully be able to make that dream happen at some point, especially if I keep doing British accents quite a lot. Yeah, to keep in practice.
Yep.
Anyway, here's one of the things that I most wanted to ask, and I really wanted to ask this of Mike as well. So at some point, I'll probably circle back to it as a subject when he's back on. But what's the biggest mistake you can make during a business trip in your own experience? Because I do have a specific one in mind that I saw happen on more than one occasion. And so, on a business trip, what's the worst thing that could possibly happen, or a preventable thing that you could, uh,
Mm,
in your
I,
just experience, what's happened that was bad
um,
besides travel problems?
I would always say
Although I
make
guess
sure that you've got
yes.
handy anything you need because you don't want to have to go searching through your, on overhead luggage or anything. If you need your, your medication or your whatever, I mean, put it in a fanny pack, put it in your pocket, whatever. I mean, and make sure you got something you can eat. It's appropriate to whatever your digestion is so that, you're not going to have to deal with
Good.
hunger or whatever issues you might have. I mean, just a bar of some kind. There's a bar for everybody out there now. Like nutrition bar or whatever, uh, or nuts or whatever you use. But I mean, make sure that you've got contingencies and contingency plans, and also make sure that you're not scheduling your flight to arrive too close to where you have to be somewhere because that'll never happen.
Right. Or the terrifying connecting flights, especially if
Yeah.
you're in a large airport like O'Hare or
Hmm.
Dallas, where you're connecting flights on the other side of the terminal, and it leaves in 10 minutes because your flight was 10 minutes late.
Yeah.
Just enough to make it. And
Try to give
I've had that
yourself
happen.
plenty of time. That was one reason when I was doing the dog, I always made sure I got in the night before, at some point the night before at least.
Oh, I
And,
definitely
you
agree
know,
with that. If
I
at
mean,
all
it's not
possible,
always
be
feasible,
early.
but yeah, when you can, yeah.
The airports near us here, specifically Newark Airport, Newark, New Jersey, where it gets busy ever since 9/11. Obviously, the waiting time just to go through screening is, of course, incomparable to what it was before, where it was just being wanded through very quickly
Oh
without.
my god.
Did we have
When
metal detectors back then? I don't even remember. I think we did.
I think so. But when I went to Vegas a few years ago, the line to go through the put your shoes in the bucket thing,
Yes.
the line was like, "Oh my god, are we waiting for Taylor Swift tickets here?" And it was really that bad.
Oh yeah, the last time I left Newark, we had a line that went out from the terminal into the area of where you walk in, past all of the. We blocked the entrances to all the different little coffee shops and the little places where you could buy newspapers. This is on the before side of the metal detector. You know, just
Mhm.
just little quick newsstands and things, almost to where you walk into the airport. For whatever reason, they just got very, very backed up that one particular day. One thing that's nice is if the business trip isn't scheduled around a holiday, or
Oh,
if
yeah.
Pat is still watching, might remember that we went down to Atlanta, Georgia during, was it spring break? Or somewhere where lots and lots of people were traveling on a non-holiday holiday, but still managed to fill the airport with bodies.
Yeah.
That was fun. And Atlanta is a very large airport, by the way,
Mm.
so that from one
It's
area to another, you take a little shuttle bus
yeah.
because it's one of the places where they actually have like a little shuttle train built in.
Yep,
But
SeaTac does too.
if I were, oh, he did. What?
What?
Oh,
Oh,
I thought you were saying Pat commented
oh.
because he was with me on that particular trip to Atlanta and advised that for exercise we walk instead of taking that
Oh,
handy little train. Because you mentioned earlier one good thing, suitcases with wheels.
yes.
I didn't have wheels for most of the
Uh,
traveling I ever did. It just wasn't something that ever came up. And certainly in
well,
my family, they had the grand tradition of when you leave for college, they buy you a get out of here suitcase, which didn't have wheels.
oh my god, all
It just looked
suitcases
like
have
nice
wheels now.
luggage as opposed to like usable luggage with, handy holders and things you could use to move uh, the suitcase around a little bit more easily.
Uh, oh,
But
another tip is, I mean, and I know I harp on this, but as I get older, it becomes more and more important. You know, any if you see a bathroom, use it.
yes, that's
You
always a
know,
great tip. Don't
but
even if you don't have to use it, use it. You'd be
mhm.
surprised.
And bring
But
water
it's
with
something I've
you.
learned with little kids too.
Yeah,
I already went. No, I don't need to. 5 minutes into the car, and they're like, "I
yeah.
have to go to the bathroom."
Well, and bring water with you, even if you can't take it on the plane. You're still going to be in that line for 2 hours.
Yeah, if it's one of those days, you do want that.
Mhm.
Of course, most people don't want to. Like, I don't want to throw it away. I'm wasting money. Like, well,
Uh,
you can always
no,
refill that plastic bottle of water with more water, and then just
well,
chuck it. Refilling a
no,
bottle of water doesn't cost you anything if it's tap
I
water.
don't know about where you're at, but at SeaTac, which is our local place, they've got recycling bins everywhere. So you just recycle it, and
Huh.
you refill it from the fountain, until
Yeah,
you because I just mean if they won't let you
that
take
is
it
a
on
good way
the
to do it.
plane because of liquids and all that bull.
Well, you
Um,
you you can't go through the metal detector if you have more than 3 liquid ounces of anything.
yeah,
So,
and
whatever water you bring into that metal detector line, you're doing without by the time you're through that line,
right, but you
and you have
keep
to
it
buy
for
it all over again.
you when you, but if you can go through that line, if while you're going through the actual waiting line, you've got water, then you're hydrated.
That's
Because heat
true. That's a
stroke
good
is a
point.
thing, and I swear in the last couple of days, I've seen so many ambulances, and I'll bet you half of them are heat strokes.
Well, I asked before, is it in the 90s in Seattle
It got
this
somewhere. I
this
wasn't
past
looking at the
weekend?
numbers. I haven't been looking at the numbers
Which is
myself.
just awful for May. We're
Yeah,
we're not even out that here. We get heat waves here on the East Coast all the time,
I mean,
and
it used to
normally
be
it comes earlier than later.
yeah. For us, it used to be August is the hottest month. That's when you get the 90s. We almost never would go past into 3 digits. When I was growing up, if you got 3 digits, that was a panic attack.
Right.
and now it's like, "Oh, yeah, it's 90 in May." Oh, wait, what? It's supposed to be 90 in August. We get into the 80s in July. So,
It does
yeah.
strange things.
Yeah,
I've got to admit,
strange.
we've been kind of lucky out here in New Jersey because we've managed to avoid the worst of some of the rest of the areas of the country, like in Texas, where it's been like 110, 112. Oh, although I was in Arizona, in Phoenix, a couple of years ago, in October or late
Oh.
September, and it was in the upper 90s, which it's never this hot. Like, but during the summer it is. In places like Phoenix, it's 110 or some awful number that people weren't meant to live through. So
Oh, yeah.
it's just chilling to me. But what was I going to say? The A couple of the things that I were thinking about were interesting. Whenever we got together during business trips, for people who normally didn't get together, you normally had something of a large lunch or dinner together. That was always a grand thing. There'd be a big speech for whatever reason. And even when we were down in Atlanta for the week and were training, they had a dinner and learn kind of thing after dinner where they had snacks and stuff like that. But I was thinking that, on business trips, the only time we ever drank were on these community nights, that kind of thing, where everybody would suddenly have like free drinks at the
Mm.
table for that one special night, like, President's Night, or the president of the company would be there, something like that. And one of the companies I worked for, which wasn't the bookstore company, had managers meetings, and some of the kids weren't legal who were managers. They were under 21. And so one of the things that happened were that people who were underage were drinking. And as far as being on a business trip, one thing you want to avoid is,
Being illegal?
or just drinking at all when you're in company with bosses and things. It's
Mhm.
not normally a good idea to do that. And it's interesting, the companies I worked for where drinking was normal as a social kind of thing during events, to the very last where they didn't even offer beer or wine for free, or even with the drink ticket kind of situation.
I think
And
people are
I
a lot
do
more
remember a
cognizant.
couple of people getting fired
Mm.
for drinking during some of the get-togethers.
I know,
So I was always very careful not to do that.
when I worked at the law firm, the Christmas party was the one place where everybody would cut loose. I mean, the lawyers at least, and in front of us. See, you gotta understand, I worked in a strange branch of law, being an intellectual property. It was nerd law, so these were all nerd attorneys. I mean, which is a good thing. I mean, that's a compliment. Um,
It sounds
because
more interesting than regular law, if you want to ask me, as far as
well,
like, well, here's your, the contract on the business, and here's your real estate information, and
well, we had stuff like that too. I mean, but what we dealt with was patents and trademarks mostly. So we had a lot of attorneys who also had a degree in electrical engineering or biotech or computer engineering or something,
okay,
because you had to have a degree in it to be able to write the patent for it for somebody. I mean, to be able to describe it adequately, you had to have the technology at your fingertips.
gotcha.
So Um, but but even so, there was a little cutting loose at the Christmas party, and I mean, personally, I'm somebody who's never drunk, so I mean, literally, as far as I knew, most of the time growing up, I'm allergic, so it just never was an issue for me. Um, but I've watched a lot of people get drunk over the years. I find it far more funny when I'm the only non-drunk one. Um,
I'm
I
sure
have
most uh, groups feel like that the day after.
Well, and it's partly, I mean, I also do a lot of karaoke, and there's another place where I'm the only non-drunk one. People are like, "How can you get up there and do that with not being drunk?" I'm like, "How could I do it if I was drunk?" I mean, no, I don't need to relax to do it. But as I
Wow.
said, I'm a big old
That
ham. So, but I mean, yeah,
well,
drinking
I am a
is
ham too. I just don't have the guts that it takes to do something like that. It takes me a while to get out of my shell, as it were.
I used to be like that. I got better. And uh, nobody ever going to find me from this anyway. No. It's just there's so many I mean, drinking in general is seems like such a weird social custom to me because I just didn't grow up with it. I wasn't that my parents were against it. It was just never a thing in our house. I mean, you didn't nobody drank. My mom, her father had drinking issues, so she was against it, but she didn't like talk about it. You know what I mean? She wasn't like, "Don't drink, don't drink." It was just like it was just never in the house. We just never saw it. And so it wasn't normal for us to think of social drinking. And then I watch all these 1940s movies where everybody's got a bar as a piece of furniture, and it's just so funny to me. I mean, you could be living hand to mouth and you still had some bourbon to share when somebody came to the door. It's like, really?
Right.
So it just seems like so bizarrely foreign to me.
Well, on the trips that I was on where people got the most drunk was either that one company that, as I mentioned before, where young people were, and that was a new company, a startup company, so that they were growing faster and things hadn't been nailed down yet as like right and wrong. Whereas when I worked for the bookstore, uh, people drank the most during the hardest and most stressful times. I noticed, so that
Hmm.
on one particular one particular year when we went, it was a harrowing week where the management of the company seemed like they didn't know what they were doing or counteracted everything that they were doing and then took it all back. And it was just so stressful. And we managed to have a managers meeting in a hotel that doubled as a college building. And I still don't remember. I think it was near Georgetown or something. I wish I remembered, but
Must have been a good
we got
meeting
we
if you
got
don't
my
remember it.
my my roommate manager and I got to our room and we were already like, when did we start complaining? No, we don't. We can't complain. We'll get in trouble if we complain. We have to be quiet, but this is awful, and this is the worst hotel we've ever been in. It's full of students walking around, and you're like, who booked this? We get into the room and they're like, you open the window and like, ah, oh, floodlights poured into the room because it was on the end of a stadium
Ah!
football. It was a football field right outside the window with all the Klieg lights all lit for a night game of some sort of a college game. And it was just like, what in the world? We just laughed our butts off.
Oh,
And we got together with the cool managers who knew when to shut up and not
yeah.
to reveal like just how desperately depressing it was to work for the company at that particular year, and all the new kids who were all like, yes sir and please sir, and I can do all that for free for you, kind of working kind of thing. And she's so us those of us, and I wasn't old at the time, or older I should say, so I was still in my 20s. And but I'm seeing all of these kids because they all look like they were like 18 or whatever, and I noticed they started shacking up, and they were geez,
Well,
such
what
a
happened.
strange scene of they hiring just kids to run large bookstores. And
They
anyway,
were
during
cheaper.
the big dinner there where they had free wine. You could go to the bar and buy drinks if you wanted to, but they had free wine at the table, and we were just stealing bottles and taking them back up to the room so that we could basically just have our own little party and just say whatever we wanted about what was going on.
Mhm.
And so my roommate almost didn't get up in time for that next morning because we had to be up extra early. And that's where I think I was going with the whole be careful about drinking on a business trip kind of thing. He did get up, but only after the district manager almost had a heart attack. Like, where's Jim? Where's Jim? He's supposed to be here. He's going to be here, right? Like, he will. Don't worry.
Mhm.
Because I didn't drink that much, so I could pretty much shake off whatever was going on. And I'm used to having only a few hours of sleep anyway. That was an awkward breakfast.
Yeah.
Anyway, sorry to
Oh, no,
kidnap the conversation in that fashion.
it's really your show. Don't worry about it. I mean,
Oh, I missed the trip.
does anybody in our copious audience have any questions for me, just in case I end up leaving soon? Because I probably will. Guess not.
Well, most people watch, as I said before this, and thank you for joining. By the way, Julie joined us with 10 minute notice before we
20
started,
minutes, something like that. Yeah.
maybe. As just somebody who it happened to pop me up, and I'm like, "Hi,"
He's
like,
like, help!
"Hi."
I don't have anyone to talk to.
Well, I could do it by myself, and I did do one, but normally I have to prep a little bit more than 20 minutes in order to do something solo and have something prepared like that. And I didn't have enough ready um, for this outside of saying that if you want to see a good movie that has to do with business travel, watch a movie called Up in the Air. It came out in 2009. It stars George Clooney and I can't remember the actress's name now. I knew I would forget, but he basically plays somebody who travels for a living. He works for a company that lays off people. So
Good.
they send him to where a company will hire him as that third party person to go into an office to say, "Hey, you're downsizing. You don't know it yet, but today's your last day." And he would have a
Bye
little
bye.
spiel. He would have all of the literature about you've just been laid off, but look, here are all the wonderful programs where you can go and get some apply for new jobs, work on your career, and it put the nicest spin on it possible. Not even I would call a spin, just an outlook, which is
Mm.
like, look, you'll hate me. You can't stand all this. Um, but this is your opportunity to do something else. You're losing your job. You're losing your income. Yes, all of that's bad. You're going to hate me, but use it.
It's just a
This
bump
is your
in the
life.
road.
This isn't just a movie kind of thing.
When
And he
I
had
think
this
of
little his little thing that he would do as the character would be to give presentations across the country, wherever he happened to be, on just uh, basically self help kind of thing with a suitcase. And he would have a suitcase like, this is your life. You're packing. This is how you pack for a business trip. It's like you're packing your life and unpacking your life. And it was a very mindful movie, and I thought it was rather good. So, Up in the Air, if you get a chance to see it, is a really good take on prepping for business trips. But be
uh,
careful of the extramarital affairs.
when you say movies with business trips, I think of Fight Club. So that's probably not as helpful.
Well, it's a strange world out there. You never know.
Well, if you haven't seen it, it does begin with Ed Norton's character being a traveling. He travels a lot for business, and it's a huge part of his issues. It comes from not having any particular. I mean, he has a home, but it's sterile because it's full of crap he ordered from IKEA, and he never is there. But
Yeah.
but it kind of starts on this business trip where he's on a plane. He travels. What was it? He's in his job is almost as bad as George Clooney's. Actually, probably worse. I can't remember if it's planes or cars, that he's deals with the idea of recalls, and he goes and investigates crashes, and
Oh,
and does the cost benefit analysis for whether the company should do a recall and take on that expense, or whether they should just
settle the
pay,
cases.
settle each individual case. And most of the time, they opt for settling each individual case and hoping that there aren't very many. And it was just like, what a soulless job. But that's part of the whole point of the movie. Don't want to give
Yeah,
it much away. Of course, like, yeah, because it's such a fresh film. It's only 20 years old.
I still haven't
Um,
seen it,
well, you're going
believe it
to.
or not.
I'm going to
Yes,
make
I
you.
am.
I will make you.
Well, you're
But
pretty good at that. I've seen some
I
great movies that you've recommended over the last year, so I appreciate it, Julie.
am.
Plus, isn't Brad Pitt in it?
Yeah, Brad Pitt,
I
Ed
knew
Norton,
Ed Norton, and I like
and
both of those actors.
and oh, I know her name. You
Anna
know,
Kendrick. Anna
no.
Kendrick is the actress that I forgot from Up in the Air. There you go.
Ah, okay. No, this is one of the best roles for her too. I mean, to show different. She's in all the Tim Burton movies. You know, his wife.
His wife,
I think she's his Tim Burton's wife, or Tim Burton's. I thought she was his
Helena
wife.
Bonham Carter.
Yeah.
I didn't know she was married to him.
Oh, I could be wrong. I could be wrong. Just
She's a
she's in
great
all his
actress. I love
movies, so
her.
it's one of those things.
Yes, she
Yeah.
is. I
Oh,
noticed that.
yes. I've loved her since I saw her in Twelfth Night a million years ago. But she's
Mine
really
was
good
Howard's End.
because but in Fight Club she gets to play vastly against what she's always stereotyped as. That's what
Well,
makes it
now I
such a
gotta see it.
good
I had
role
no
for
idea she
her.
was in that.
Yes, and it's amazing because I mean, she's played a lot of stuff, that's a little bit off or well off, I mean, Sweeney Todd, blah, 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 but she does get cast as like these fragile sort of characters more often than not. And the character she plays in Fight Club is like 180 degrees from that. So it's really good. Oh, anyway, don't want to give anything away, but I should probably go.
All right. Well, we're just
So,
about at the end of our time anyway.
oh, I
That
was able to stay
tip
for the
about the
whole thing.
movie was the
Oopsie.
very last thing that I had as
Ah,
far as this goes. So, the part that I was able to prep, we more or less discussed everything.
oh, good.
Plus, yeah, I don't want to just keep talking about endless things. So, this is the part of the podcast where I basically say, like, so, do you have anything to plug?
Oh,
And so, please,
yes.
once again, why don't you refresh our listeners with your name and what you do? I'm assuming that if we go on to Amazon and look up some of your wonderful narrated stuff, and if I'm not mistaken, they have some of your podcast fare for sale as well on Audible.
Oh, no, my podcast is not for sale on Audible. My podcast is free. Screw Audible for that. Sorry, they do not offer good rates for that sort of thing. And if I
No, they don't.
charged for any of my past episodes, then I'd have to be tracking down all my actors and paying them because I would. No, I don't make any money off of any of those. If I do going forward, if I do, we'll have, contracts and stuff to make sure everybody gets something fair.
I
I would
believe
not do
Audible
that.
offers access to podcasts for free.
So
And
does the entire internet.
this is true. But
Uh,
there are plenty of people who don't listen to podcasts as a regular thing, besides,
yeah.
of course, Cube Nerds.
Well,
So,
basically, what
what's your name again?
my name is Julie
Besides crazy.
Hoverson.
Thank you. Would you spell
Julie
that?
Hoverson, HOV as in Victor, ERSON. It's Norwegian.
Oh,
And
didn't know
well,
that.
way back when, yeah. And
Okay.
the if you look up my name on audible.com, there's, I don't know, maybe 30 books that I narrated because all the others are under pseudonym because they're werewolf porn. No, I mean romance novels. And so we won't go into that. But
30 Shades of Fur.
oh Lord, don't even get me started.
Wolfbane.
Uh, and the script I'm writing right now is werewolves too. Um, but And my show is 19 Nocturne Boulevard. If you speak German, look up Contendo Media. They've done German versions of many of my shows, of the episodes of my show. I do original and adapted material from public domain, like H.P. Lovecraft and stuff. Um, the What else do I do? Oh, and I'm also, if you like audio dramas and you want to find out more, I also am a Twitter feed of at a_d_infinitum. It's the one with the microphone, and I
So
promote
AD
audio.
infinitum with
Yeah,
underscores for the AD. Gotcha.
yeah, and even then, it'll bring up a random selection of things. So if you're uncertain, it's the one with the microphone, old looking
Okay.
microphone. Um, and I promote audio dramas basically 24/7 with tweets, just saying what's out now and old shows that are still available, because it's easy to forget when a show is no longer currently coming out and being popped in your podcatcher, that it still exists. So there's a lot of stuff out there. And it's so funny.
Yeah.
I just found another one that says, we're the first audio sitcom ever. And I'm like, right. Did you Google it first? There are so many are like reinventing old time radio. Yeah, right. Did you Google it first? There's at least a dozen of them I've got on my list that say they were the first. No, because my show came out 10 years ago. But anyway, I mean,
I know
it's
you
very
were at the very beginning of the podcast boom, as it were.
sort of, yeah, the audio drama boom, sort of.
Okay.
Um, but anyway, so yeah, just give it a chance, take a look, and there's all sorts of stuff there. And anybody who is interested in, might as well push this too. We actually, on my Discord server, we do cold readings, which is a chance for actors to pick up a script and just read it. I mean, act it, fresh, without rehearsal, for practice and fun. So if you know any actors who want to do that sort of thing, send them my way, because Scotty's there, and
Yes.
that's how we. That's
And
yeah.
here's even a plus for that. Unlike some of the other servers that I've been on, in yours, no one has their cameras on. So you get
Oh,
to
no.
do, for an audio drama, an audio only cold read. So if you're at all
Yes.
self aware too much or self conscious and don't want people just staring at you while you're reading, this is
Mhm.
wonderful. All you see are just pictures of what people might look like or avatars, and it's there's no judgment. It's just
Yeah.
an easy way to easily fit into a nice, uh, like, hey, here's some lines. Just read them out loud and enjoy it.
It's
And
and it's,
boy, I've really enjoyed that process.
yeah, we're trying to be real relaxed. It's no pressure. Nobody's actually judging you. It's just giving you the chance to practice, because honestly, if you sit down and read something aloud, like an audiobook, that's one kind of practice, but it's not the same as trying to keep up with other actors. But, the only person who really should be judging you at this point is yourself. And I mean, if somebody wants feedback, we'll do our best. But most of the time, we're all just listening to our own selves too, because that's the way it is. It's just like when you're at the gym, nobody's looking at you, they're all looking at themselves, no matter what you think. But
That's nicely put.
yeah, but we're
And
nice and we're funny and
what's the name of your Discord server?
the Discord server is. Wait, hold on. I better make sure I get it right. I got those numbers still, right? No. Um, well, I on Discord, I'm Crazy Aunt Julie number. They always change those. They're getting rid of the numbers. I'll probably still be Crazy Aunt Julie 7549, and the Discord server is called 19 Nocturne BLVD period.
Yes,
That's 19 Nocturne. Just to make sure people understand, it's not spelled out 19. Um,
one
yeah,
nine.
yep.
19
And
Nocturne Boulevard, and Nocturne has an E at the end of it, and
yes,
BLVD. That's
yes.
pretty easy to find on Discord, which is a
Mhm.
very, very popular social media for those who play games online or otherwise and who are into acting. It's become a real popular social media mecca. If you haven't been on Discord before, folks, I suggest you check it out or at least Google it a little bit and see what it's all about. It's a nice way to talk to folks and choose how you want to talk to them. You can type, you can use audio, you can use video, or any combination of the above, including
Mhm.
sharing screens, all for, I
Free.
believe it's free.
Mhm.
So that was an enticement for myself.
Uh,
And for my own plugging at the very end of this, just wanted to mention that a couple of things that are rather newer. I was on a oh broadcast what do you call it radio
Interview?
no it was an interview but there's a word for it never mind
Program?
it is a program but it's one where you have different affiliates that play the show.
No.
Yeah, it's an affiliated program. Breakfast with the Beatles. I was interviewed with author Jude Sutherland Kessler for the audiobook that I finished called She Loves You. And so if you look up Dennis Mitchell's Breakfast with the Beatles, which is based out of Los Angeles, we were interviewed just last weekend. And that's available on his website at Breakfast with the Beatles. And you can hear the entire show there, including all of the music or just the full length interview that I've done. First time I've ever been on regular radio stations broadcast. So it
Kick
was
ass.
kind of a nice thing. And the podcast that I've been a part of is doing a crowdfunding now for Peculiar Radio. See something in common there? Radio, another show. And so for Peculiar Radio, we're doing a crowdfunding thing on Indiegogo.com for Lengthy Tangent, which is the company holding name for Peculiar Radio. I'm a writer for the show as well as one of the minor characters, and I encourage you folks to check out the crowdfunding site on Indiegogo and give a little look. You'll also find us on Instagram and being taught of on Facebook with a couple of teaser trailers. So please check that out. The main thing, of course, that I'm talking about now is still my audiobook for She Loves You. It is now available on Audible, and unlike Audible exclusive things, it's available on just about every other platform you can possibly download or purchase audiobooks from, including Chirp and Spotify, who now sell audiobooks as well, and audiobooksnow.com, and just a whole range of other ones, including Scrib.fm and I believe Libro.fm as well. So please check out She Loves You by Jude Sutherland Kessler, Volume 3 of the John Lennon series on audiobook now and at a reasonable price. I think that's about everything that I had to talk about, at least
You sound so smooth
until
and
I
professional.
remember that I probably have forgotten something, so I'm being too smooth and
No, but you
professional as I
do.
go.
It was very nice.
Thank you kindly. I appreciate that. Anyway, so we'll say goodbye for now. And I hope Mike is watching because only he can probably end this remotely
Turn us
since I
off.
don't think I have a turn off button. So, anyway, we'll sign off from now unless you have anything, any last thoughts, Julie?
Um, I mean, anytime you travel, just make sure you've got what you need. Don't put it in somebody else's hands. Don't,
Yes.
don't let anybody pack your bags, even your wife. No, I mean, but, but I mean, really just make sure you've got everything you need. And because if you have to buy it at the airport, it's going to cost 20 times as much.
And don't overpack. You can't possibly wear all of those clothes. And if it's a long enough trip, you're probably going to wind up using a washer and dryer at the hotel anyway. When I was training in El Paso and I was there for 2 weeks, that was a good lesson to learn. Which also, by the way, was the very first time that I bought a suitcase with wheels. because I brought way too much clothes as Jess, who I'm hoping is out there somewhere, who was my co-trainer for that trip, and did everything right that I didn't do right. Was a wonderful person to teach me, like, Scott, in going forward, you might not want to bring all of that kind of stuff. So, lesson learned. Anyway, thank you very much for watching for Cube Nerds, and we hope to be back next Tuesday on our regular scheduled time. And don't have a topic that we'll be discussing yet, but we'll try to do a little bit of advance notice next week and let you know. But right now, for Cube Nerds, for Mike Spear and for Scott McKinley in Spear Studios, please, for our YouTube channel, subscribe and like this episode, and we'll be seeing you all soon. And thank you very much for Julie Hoverson, our very, very special guest star. Thank you for joining.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Take care now. Bye, folks.
Now we should say something embarrassing just in case it didn't turn off. Oh, okay. Well, screw it.